This is the Leica M11, a dream camera for some, just a tool for others. But after a couple years of use, what are my thoughts on it? And is it really worth the money in 2025? So oddly enough, I made a video like 2 days after I bought this camera, and I was planning on making lots more videos, and then just made videos using the camera to review like most of the lenses on this table and a bunch of other things, but I never ended up making like a follow-up review. So this review is going to be a little bit of like a long-term thing for me, having used it in multiple continents, in professional things, in personal daily stuff, basically every different situation possible. And as far as formatting goes, there were 5 reasons why I initially was going to pick up this camera. So I'm going to address each of those reasons and see if this thing has really held up its end of the bargain on those reasons that I purchased it in the first place. The first reason I purchased the M11 specifically over the M10s was going to be dynamic range. The M10 sensor is really fun, and I liked a lot of the images that came out of it. They were a little bit more contrasty, which makes sense given that it was older sensor technology, 24 megapixel sensor versus like a 60 megapixel sensor. But we have seen this 60 megapixel sensor in like, there's probably at least 10 different cameras now that have this same sensor in it, between the Q series, between these, between the A7R 4s and 5s, the A7CR, the RX1R3 that I just reviewed. Like, there are a ton of cameras that have this 60 megapixel sensor. And as I say often, for good reason, that sensor is incredible, and it has very, very good dynamic range. One of the reasons specifically that I was looking at to upgrade was because of the lack of dynamic range in a lot of the scenarios that I often photograph in. So the ability to get really, really good dynamic range has been really useful. And absolutely, I already knew that this thing was going to be good, and it has absolutely lived up to that task. The files have a ton of flexibility, and there are specific images from the M10 that are like kind of burned into my brain as reasons why I needed to switch. And those were just times where I was blowing highlights and there's just nothing I could do. I couldn't underexpose enough to not blow the highlights and retain information enough in the shadows to bring them back up. It just wasn't possible. With this camera, absolutely possible. On the dynamic range front, this thing gets a giant check mark of approval. And the second bit was internal storage. Now, this is one of those things where you hope you just never have to use it. I have not had to use it, but the fact that I have the ability to record JPEGs at 18 megapixels while recording full resolution RAW files into the SD card, and then have those 18 megapixel JPEGs on the internal, just as like a backup worst case scenario. If the card corrupts, I still have the internal memory on here. I think it's something that a lot of other cameras need to start implementing, especially once you get over like the $3,000-$4,000 price tag. I think there's no reason why you shouldn't have internal storage. This has it. It hasn't need to save me yet. But it's one of the things that's how I'm running this thing. So I'm running 18 megapixel JPEGs onto the internal storage just so I never run out of space. I can delete things before a wedding or whatever, but I just want to know for a fact that I have something backed up that worst case scenario I can use. I can up-res, I can work with it basically. I also use those JPEGs where I wouldn't want to be using them necessarily. So I put them on a very kind of flat profile, and they also are getting as much dynamic range as possible, basically so that I can go back there, add contrast, add things that I need to. It wouldn't be ideal necessarily, but I'm prepping the JPEGs not to be just straight delivered, but so that they can look as close to a RAW file as possible. It's been really useful to have the fact, less useful and more, I have more peace of mind about this. The third bit is ISO 64. It's one of those things where I don't think a lot of people are going to be needing that necessarily. I don't often shoot at 1.4 in needing ISO 64, but there are the few times where I've been doing wedding stuff and I want that shallower depth of field. I want that subject separation, and it's been useful to not need to be at ISO 200, which the M10s were at. So ISO 64, that's basically just where I set it at when I'm going out during the day. If I'm going to need to stop down and shoot like F8 or something like that, for street photos or something. It's usually not a fast moving thing. And typically the stops that I go to, I usually kind of just skip a few, to be honest, on this camera. I'm usually either at 1.4, 2.8, or 5.6. It just helps my brain to kind of like regulate what things I want to do. For the most part, that just is what I'm rocking with, and it's been helpful for sure. Now, another really just nice thing about having that sensor is going to be the resolution. I have made prints, I've made large, I've been able to do a lot with this camera. And one of the things that I've done a lot is carried around this camera as a personal camera with the 35 Summilux on there. It was a lens that I got kind of around the same time that I got the M11. And the ability to crop in and get like a 50 millimeter frame or like a 40 millimeter kind of look out of something, you're just not losing very much resolution when you have a 60 megapixel image. And the ability to have such a high resolution sensor is super, super useful. Now, it is one of those things where I haven't changed the resolution as much as I thought. I was going to maybe, when I'm doing weddings, maybe I'll do like event coverage stuff at like the 20 some megapixel, 28 or whatever this thing is, and then have something at 18 and then I basically just use this thing at 60 megapixels. And if you get some dance floor images at 60 megapixels, no one needs those, but you're going to be fine. Better to have it than to not have it. And then low light performance. I mean, this sensor isn't necessarily known for its low light performance, but I can definitely say that it performs in low light much, much, much better than some other cameras. And specifically, I was mainly comparing it to the M10. And despite the M10 being a 24 megapixel camera and this being a 60 megapixel camera, it just does perform better. These give me clean enough images that it's just not an issue. While I wouldn't say that this is like a low light beast or anything, it's definitely probably a stop or two better than the M10s to my recollection, and that is definitely worth it to me. Now, I will add just another bonus about the Leica M system in general. One of the things that I have going on here is just a ton of lenses. I think that this system in general gives you just the opportunity to do such cool things. So I have a 28 Summicron, a 35 Summilux, and a 50 Summilux. All of them are now one generation back as far as the build goes, but optically, I'm pretty sure they're all just the same as the newest ones. They just don't have the close focus things, which is fine because I use this camera specifically through the rangefinder, and I don't really mess with Visiflexes. I very, very, very rarely use the back LCD screen here, and I use this more as like a traditional rangefinder would, right? But I will say that the ability to have so many other different lenses, like I essentially have a 21 Summilux here with the Typoc lenses. The 50 it's just so nice to be able to have different focal lengths and stuff that come in at significantly cheaper prices. So I will say that if I'm going out to do a gig or I'm going to travel just with the M, one of the things that I really enjoy is I have those kind of mainstay focal lengths at 28, 35, and 50 on the Leica, and then I also travel or bring with me the 21 from Typoc and the 75. So I have like a portrait lens that I can use if I want a little bit more reach, and then I also have an ultra wide lens, all at 1.4, and all that just kind of fit within that ecosystem. And let's say I want to go out and just photograph something for fun and want to have a little bit more character, or I just want something that's a little bit smaller. I have this little Typoc Eureka lens that I've done a video on. The Light Lens Lab lenses are super cool. This one is tiny and gives you that kind of old Summicron vibe. This super old TT Artisan lens, I mean, it's basically like a visual copy of the Summicron. This lens is just fun if you're just going to go out and not really pay attention and you just want to make some images. It also does have an aperture ring, so you can stop down and then I also have the Artis Lab, whatever, the 35 1.4. It's just the fact that you can use all these lenses, as well as like I have this 40 Summicron on my M6 here. There's just so many different things you can do with this camera that are native to the camera. So you can go with vintage inspired lenses and go with that kind of like dreamy, like a glowy kind of look, or you can go with a modern Summicron that render, or Summilux that renders super, super well, but also gives like really good fall off. And then there's other third-party lenses that do a really good job of getting you into that realm where they're doing, getting you 80, 90% of the way there to like a Summilux at like a 20% of the price or whatever. I will also add that I sometimes add a base plate onto here, especially if I'm going out and doing more like paid work and stuff. One of the main reasons is so I can just toss it onto a Arca Swiss tripod or any kind. Basically all these are like that Arca Swiss type. But the thing that never really leaves here unless I am doing flash work is this. It looks like a film advance lever and it goes in the same spot, but really it's a little thumb rest. And the nice thing is it just gives me that kind of like mini security of having something right here. And it's fun because it's brass, so it's slowly wearing down and I'm getting wear marks, kind of like where my fingers go on here. It's just a nice way to have a thumb rest and look good, but also be a little bit more secure because it comes all the way out like this. And my thumb can just go right in that space and makes it really, really easy. As far as the concerns go, they're super minimal. The first bit was that there was some freezing going on. I had one time where I was just at a park in Paris with my family where I took 2 photos in rapid succession after looking at some other ones. And I was like overloading the system. I still think it shouldn't have done it, but it did. It just like overloaded. I popped the battery out, put it back in. I lost those 2 photos. That's the only time it's happened. Has the camera froze on me and I just popped the battery in and out before? Yeah, that's probably happened 3 other times, but never from like when I was using it in the middle of something. It's been more like I turn the camera on, it just kind of turns on, but the viewfinder shows nothing. I can't access the back. So it's just been a quick like, all right, I guess I'll just pop the battery in and out and it just works. So I don't know what their deal is, but it's been a very, very rare thing. And I think it's been as rare as any other camera I've ever used. So I would not consider that an issue at all. One of the other things that I was talking about in the original thing was just how they had changed out the base plate and kind of gone for a different design here. I found no issues with this. It's not been something I've been concerned about at all. And to be frank, this is the only battery I have for this. I have never run out of battery. And the times where I've used a lot of the battery, I've just plugged in while in between things. If it was at a wedding, I've plugged in during dinner and just give it some more juice and it's been fine. I rarely ever look at the back LCD screen. Maybe once when I'm in the middle of moving between things just to double check my exposure, but usually my exposure is just dead on and I don't really look at it. So yeah, it just does a really good job. I've obviously also modified the little Leica red dot here. I did a video on that specifically, but I have a replacement for that. I'll put that in the description as well. It just makes it look a lot cleaner, in my opinion. I was even watching back to look at my video on the M11 when it first came out and when I was first using it and just going like, oh, I don't really like that red dot on the black cameras. It doesn't bother me on the silver ones as much for some reason, but I think this just looks so much better in black. So if you do have a black, or silver M11 that isn't one of the P models or the special editions or whatever, I would definitely, if this is your vibe, definitely consider picking one of these up because the install was super easy and I think it just looks so much better. So I will absolutely say that for the price, the upgrade was worth it to me. It is just a much better camera. And if I was only using this for personal stuff and I just wanted like a street photography style travel camera or something, would I have upgraded? Probably not. But the fact that I do this for, like, I bring this on professional gigs, I bring it to weddings, I bring it traveling, and I'm getting some of the best image quality I can get as well out of such a small and compact camera. It just is super worth it to me. I do think that this rangefinder concept is definitely not for everybody. It's so much more involved. And since having kids, I will say that I use this a lot less than I did before I had kids. I was way more into the whole rangefinder thing than I have been the last 2 or so 3 years. And I think that just really comes down to the fact that when I'm out with my kids, my youngest is not even 5 yet. So I'm still doing a lot of things. I'm still like holding their hands when we cross streets. I'm still much more like physically involved with them. And so having a camera and a system that is so mentally and physically, because you have to be two-handing this camera unless you're zone focusing at like f/16. It's just a much more involved process. And so when you go out to use this, you are absolutely going out to make a photograph. You're going out to have a photography experience. And I think that is kind of the thing that is beautiful about this camera. It's beautiful about the M series, but it is one of the things that is a little bit more cumbersome, I would say. Just know that going in, that if you are thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna like, I know my friend Kyle Meshina, who you've probably seen, I've probably posted some of his wedding photos during this video. Like, he just made a video about how he kind of misses his Q series, because when you're going out and doing other things like filming and doing multiple other things, this camera is just more difficult to use than most other systems out there, especially the modern mirrorless stuff with great autofocus. This just doesn't have that. But when you're going out to, again, have a photography specific experience and you want to be more involved in the process, that's where I think this thing, and just Leica M system in general, is a beautiful experience, and it connects you deeper into the photography that you make with it. So if you have any questions about this or the Leica M series or anything like that, let me know in the comments down below. And if there's enough stuff, I will definitely do a follow-up video. If you want to watch my initial video on this camera, you can check that out up here. Check out more of my Leica videos up here, and I will see you in one of those.